Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Grandville City Council. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask Marcy to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Gelderlos.
Present.
Merringa. Norhuck.
Here.
Steenstra. Troost. Vanderwall.
Here.
And Mayor Mas.
Here. Well, tonight for the invocation, the pastor we had scheduled, I do not see him here tonight, so I'll give the invocation. So for those of you who wish, I'd invite you to stand for the invocation. We're going to follow that with a pledge of allegiance. So we pray, God, thank you for another beautiful day. Thank you that it's the first day of fall, and we're looking forward to a new season. We thank you, you're a God of incredible, infinite variety. But on the other hand, you're a God who remains steadfast, and one of those things that never changes about you is your love for your people, your creation. So we thank you that you love us, that you care for us, you guide us, you set our steps before us. So tonight as we make decisions, we pray that we will make good decisions, ones that are in the best interest of everybody who lives in this community. And thank you for the people who who work for the city, who volunteer, and just show such integrity and passion and love for this community. We thank you for all of them. We pray that they will feel appreciated tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have before you the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Support.
Motion and support. All those in favor, please say yes.
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 And any opposed, please say no. Before I forget, Council Member Steenstra and Council Member Troost have both asked to be excused. Is there a motion to excuse them?
So moved.
Motion by Randy.
Support.
Support by JR. Any discussion? All those in favor of excusing them, please say yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposition, please say no. Great. We have the minutes from our last meeting, September 8th. Had a chance to take a look at those. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion.
I'll support that. Thank you. Any additions, corrections? Anything anybody would like to comment on that? If not, all those in favor of approving the minutes from September 8th, please say yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposition, please say no. Presentation of bills. Boy, I don't know how many meetings we've had where it's been a hefty amount, so, but again, like I've said for the last 5-6 meetings, whatever it's been, lots of work's going on. So tell us anything you'd like to comment on.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, not a slow few weeks for us. Still trying to make a lot of good things happen here in town. The first bill I would like to highlight is actually one on the pre-written check register to Reliant Fire Apparatus Inc. in the amount of $376,880. This was payment for the fire engine repairs regarding the accident that took place last winter. As a friendly reminder, that is funded from the insurance company. We received a pretty big prepayment from them, and ultimately it gets paid out of this budget year. But the good news related to that is Fire Engine 55 is back in Grandville and back in service, and as far as I know, it's like new and working great. So excited to have that back in town. Moving on to the regular check register, like normal, quite a few and quite a variety of different invoices. A few that I'd like to highlight. One is to CSX Transportation Local Railroad, invoice in the amount of $12,697. This was annual train crossing signal maintenance. I do want to highlight on that note, talking about signal crossings as well. Charlie and I had a meeting with CSX and NDOT a few weeks ago, and we are trying to work on a grant application to try to get some pretty significant upgrades done to the railroad crossing just north of Chicago Drive on Wilson. We're waiting on the railroad to get us the information we need, but that is a grant program that's offered by NDOT annually, so we're going to try to see if we can get some improvements done to that crossing. Georgetown Construction, the amount of $205,187.59. This is the final payment for the 36th, 31st, and Wallace water main upgrades minus the retainage. We are maintaining $50,000 of retainage on those projects. They still have a punch list of items that need to get taken care of in terms of some corrections of some planting and soil in some of the right-of-ways and a little bit of concrete work. So just to clarify there, it's technically the final payment minus some retainage that we're holding on to. L&H services in the amount of cross that one. Lee's Trenching Services, Inc., the amount of $9,073. This was miscellaneous hydrant replacements taking place in the community. Norogen Systems, LLC, in the amount of $10,312.41. This is the motor pool diagnostics tool that was approved on August 25th. Also on August 25th, the GPS unit was approved from Seiler Instrument and Co. in the amount of $7,189.75. The last two to highlight, one is S&P Global Ratings in the amount of $23,450. That invoice will ultimately be reimbursed by the bond proceeds following closing at the end of the month, but that is the rating that was required to be done as part of our bonding process. As a friendly reminder, we did maintain the city's AA bond rating, which is quite good for a community of our size. And then lastly, the Woody Williams Foundation in the amount of $500. The Woody Williams Foundation is the foundation that is helping to run the fundraiser for the Gold Star Memorial that Chief Anglin presented to you all several months back. That's a $500 donation from the Parks Board out of their kind of separate, not tax dollar funds that they have, that they elected to donate to that. So just in case you saw that, obviously as a local government, we're not allowed to make donations, but they have some special money that gives them the ability to elect to use it for purposes like that. So I could go on with more, but that's probably enough for this evening. But if there are any questions about any of the other invoices, I'm happy to do the best I can to answer questions.
Questions for Griffin on any of the bills? Okay, great. Is there a motion to approve the bills tonight in the amount of $1,249,578.38?
So moved.
Motion
Support.
and support. Any other comments or questions? Marcy, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Merringa,
Yes.
Norhuck,
Yes.
Vanderwall,
Yes.
Gelderlos,
Yes.
and Mayor Mas.
Yes. A couple presentations tonight. One that I've been looking forward to is the 2025 PACER ratings. That rates how are the condition of our roads. And we have a written report, and we're also going to have another report tonight. So welcome.
Thanks, Mayor.
So you've got the equipment out.
I do, and if you guys wanted to check it out afterwards, you're welcome to do so,
Okay,
if there's interest.
thank you.
All right, well, thanks for having me, everyone. My name is Mike Zonik. I'm a transportation planner with Grandville Metropolitan Council. I was here today as a favor to Griffin and Charlie, who are great partners of ours, to shed some light on transportation planning activities that we have, but more specifically how it relates to the road conditions in your jurisdiction. Next slide, please. Today we'll talk about the intro to GVMC, transportation planning activities, Hazer Condition Survey, and how it's used, results from Grandville with trend analysis, some recommendations to move forward, and questions and discussion. Next slide, please. I'm not going to be going specifically by the bullet points up there, but please read along if you can up there. In Michigan, there are about 14 MPOs, Metropolitan Planning Organizations, like ourselves throughout the state that handle transportation planning in their regions. The MPO is made up of local jurisdictions and transportation agencies like the road commissions, and ours includes those in Kent and Eastern Ottawa County. As MPO staff, we maintain several programs and documents that identify transportation deficiencies and proposed fixes where the allocated revenues from the federal government need to match the planned expected expenditures on the ground. It's very important when we're dealing with federal dollars. We collect lots of data and apply it to our deficiencies analysis when identifying potential projects for improvement which Grandville is always at the table for. So appreciate your cooperation on that. We could go further on what an MPO is, but I think we just basically exist to support you and keep federal transportation funding coming into the region. So we're the planning organization that checks all those boxes for the federal government. Next slide, please. So GVMC completes a comprehensive mode-based analysis for a long-range transportation plan that goes out to 2050. It's a document that we do every 5 years, identifying needs for each of the bullets up there. There's a more focused look during the development of the TIP, which is what we just finished. It's a fiscal year 26 to 29 TIP that has, again, the projects allocated that meet the federal funds that are available. So it's kind of our bread and butter and what gets put on the ground in the region. It's got to be a financially constrained program. So when programming projects for the development of the TIP document, the committees rely on several data inputs to define road safety issues, congestion problems, and condition deficiencies, with the most important of those that we use for condition being the PASER ratings, and we'll go into those now. We'll relate those back to Grandville's PASER ratings here in a second. So PASER stands for Pavement Service Evaluation and Rating. The TAMC, the Transportation Asset Management Council, was developed by Michigan legislation in 2002 to unify and spread knowledge of asset management throughout the state, and effectively when investing in Michigan infrastructure. The PASER system was developed by the TAMC in 2012 to bring forward a uniform way to survey the roads so that all jurisdictions are speaking the same language when they're talking about road conditions, no matter what the jurisdiction. So GVMC's been surveying roads since before I started, and I've been there for 18 years now. But it used to be PCI, but now it's PASER. Things have changed in the past. But somewhat recently, we've taken it to the next level with the Tahoe out there. I'm not sure if you checked it out on the way in, but we can provide lots of outputs for jurisdictions to see their data in a variety of different ways now. And the Tahoe has outputs of rutting. It gives a roughness index condition rating. It has forward-facing and rear-facing imagery. So you can essentially, from the office, go and potentially scope out a project without having to visit the location. And we rewrite this data every year. So there's always if a treatment's been put on the ground, you will see it in the imagery after we create the reports at the end of the day. But we did this with the Tahoe because PASER ratings, it's a simple 1 through 10 survey, and it doesn't provide a whole lot of information, but we want to provide more data metrics to help you guys make decisions on your end, especially with limited budgets in mind. And that's, I think, our overall goal, to extend the dollars as far as possible to keep your system in a state of good repair, basically. Next slide, please. So let's go into this. The value of the road is determined by a bunch of different factors. We have types of crack, including block cracking, edge cracking, alligator, longitudinal, transverse, among many. And we have factors like rutting, the size of the block cracks, what percentage of the road is covered and what type of crack, how wide the cracks are open. And it's deceiving too, because you think, you're looking at Wilson out here, you think it's in pretty good shape, but if you walk out to the road, you can see wheel path cracking in both lanes, and it's breaking up, and it's going to become a 3 at some point, but you don't see that driving on it, and it doesn't look like it, but it is a way for us as planners to talk the same language, regardless what deficiency there is. So it's really important. Sometimes you get a strange impression on a rating, but once you actually go out and take a peek, it is what it is. So once the ratings are complete, we can determine the condition category they belong to, whether it be in poor, fair, or good. Poor is 1 through 4, which is structurally deficient. Fair is a 5 through 7, which needs a crack seal or a seal coat with potentially a thin overlay. And then an 8 through 10 are usually typically pretty good. And the 8s might need a longitudinal crack to be filled just to maintain it for as long as you can. But it's important to use that asphalt PASER cheat sheet, if you're unfamiliar with PASER, to get a better idea of why the ratings are what they are. So once the ratings are complete, we can give a PASER a jurisdiction overall score for their network. And now we have a grasp on PASER. Let's kind of move into what Grandville's results were for 25. So we rated a total of 187 lane miles surveyed by GVMC that cover major and local roads. Lane miles are essentially length times width of the lane, and that's just an area. The breakdown of results showed that overall there were 27% good, 26% fair, and 47% poor, with an average of 5.1, which is in the fair category. In our report, we provided breakdown summaries by legal system, which is primarily used by the state to define ownership, and national functional classification, which is NFC, which is separated by how the road functions. NFC also determines whether a road is going to be federal aid or not. And it goes from 1 to 7, so if it's a local road, it'd be a 7. Anything higher than a 7, like 6, which is a collector, all the way to 1, which is an interstate. Those are all federal aid roads and available to have federal funds used on them for improvements. But looking at the map, the conditions look a little rough with a lot of red on the map at first glance, but as we looked at the trends in Grandville, we can see we're heading in the right direction, which is good news. So let's go to the next slide, please. So looking at the trends for major city roads, which are essentially the federal aid roads, we're seeing good movement from 2021 to 2025 in the good direction with an overall PASER rating of 5.4. We're still in the fair category. We have 25 lane miles moving in the poor to good direction, and 21 lane miles moving in the good to poor. And we want the bigger number, obviously, towards the good. So that's looking pretty good. In and out of the fair is pretty much even from poor to fair, fair to poor, and so is the other one. So the big takeaway from this is the movement is going in the right direction with your current practices of asset management. That's a good thing. So continued asset management practices are coordinated with MPO for federal funds is key to maintaining this progress. Also maintaining conditions the best you can with the finances available, especially in those fair categories, trying to maintain those 5 through 7s as long as you possibly can. Will extend the life and kind of kick the need for a reconstruction, a cost of reconstruction down the road, which is kind of the goal of asset management. So let's go into your locals. Thank you. Looking at the trends for the local city roads, we've seen a little less movement from the poor to good direction with an overall PASER rating of 4.9. We can see that we have nearly 28 lane miles moving in the good direction with 26.6 moving in the bad direction. It does look like there's more in and out movement from the fair category towards the poor category, so this is something to definitely pay attention to. Your local roads don't receive federal funds, which is tough from the MPO, but also important to stress getting those funds elsewhere. Continued asset management practices, again, along with utilizing tax dollars, Act 51 funds, and local millages is key to move the needle in the right direction for local jurisdictions. The action item here is to the same and maintain what you have in using good practices to maintain those fair categories the best you can and to delay those costly reconstruction projects down the road. So let's go to recommendations. So the final recommendation we can is that we can't reconstruct everything, right? Everything needs to be fixed by a strategy of mix of fixes, which basically means don't fix the worst first. So extending a PASER rating as long as you can is probably the top priority. Maintain those fares the best you can. Other recommendations include annual PASER rating to track the trends, which is what you've been doing for the last number of years. So we appreciate that. And talking with other street maintenance organizations to see what they're doing, what might be working for them. Maybe they know something, the county road commissions might know are trying something new that's really working for them. So keep coordinating and communicating. And I think MPO is a good stage to have those conversations at that level. The final figure up here shows scenarios for our 2050 long-range plan, looking at the impacts of different funding level investments. And through some complex software analysis, we had to fictitiously double our budget, double our revenues to maintain existing overall APR of 5.1, I think it is, for the entire MPO, even with MDOT included, and they have a lot of good roads. So existing levels, as you can see, are really tough and unsustainable. unless you have ways to fund projects. In other words, it could also show that the deterioration of the road seems to always outpace the funding available to fix them, which is problematic. And that's not a good taste to leave in your mouth, I don't think. But I'll say the real progress, I think, happens because of collaboration and cooperation between us jurisdictions. So thanks for Grandville in doing that and actually doing a great job on their projects and getting projects in the ledger at the MPO level. So we really appreciate that. And that's all I have for recommendation. We can open it up to questions and discussion, but thanks for your opportunity to speak today. I'll bring it back to the council for discussion.
Questions for Mike or comments? Justin?
Yeah, I have a couple. So it says in the recommendations, really prioritizing those that are rated as fair for fixes because they're not quite as expensive. And
Right.
so I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit as to, how do you prioritize within that? And secondly, does that match what we have planned for our road plan long-term to really have this mix of fixes that you outlined?
So that fair category is from 5 to 7. And from 7, you're getting large blocks, and those can probably be easily crack filled and maintain that 7 for a couple more years until it turns into 6. So there's going to be some secondary cracks that come off of those. And the blocks will get smaller once they get to like a 5-foot size. They become 6s, down to a 4 even if the blocks get under a foot. When it gets to a 4 or 5, sometimes it's just better to do a fog seal or something to, you don't want to reconstruct it yet. You don't want it to get to 4. So you want to maybe push that road 5 years down the path with like an overlay or a thin overlay. You're going to have to reconstruct it at some point because it's going to be a structural issue. But we're not a maintenance agency, so we rely on the jurisdictions to really prove their plans and maybe go off the PASER ratings the best they can, but they do have their own program or their plan, I'm sure.
So I can tell you a little bit what we've been doing, and I can then defer to Charlie, because I know he's obviously been here longer than me. So, talking about road maintenance is honestly a really depressing topic, because...
Can't win.
Well, because as Mike mentioned, we can take as many steps as we want, and without doing something incredibly dramatic, you're just not gonna keep pace. So it's a balance that you have to strike of what's the amount are we comfortable and willing to spend to maintain these roads in the best we can. And one of the things that, I don't wanna put Mike on the spot, but I know that creates some of this issues is the cost of road work over the last decade has gone up exponentially. And for a variety of reasons, the economies of maintaining road systems with the current funding model we have in the state of Michigan, it doesn't work. So one of the things that you all as elected officials are going to be constantly put in a tough position for is, do you take advice of maintaining your middle of the pack roads for as long as you can and essentially try to slow the bleeding, which you can do through a variety of different maintenance techniques. Some of those maintenance techniques, one of them being chip sealing, tends to be incredibly unpopular among people. Or do you listen to people who are living on your worst roads arguing they're paying all these dollars in taxes and we're not seeing our roads be improved? So again, I say that with, there's not a perfect solution. My understanding, the model that the city of Grandville has been taking, particularly the last year and a half with the increased millage that you all authorized, is we have been doing a catch-up. So essentially, we have been investing in what you would think of more of those poor conditioned roads, trying to get as many into that moderate area as we can. Obviously, when we resurface a road, it'll go to good. Some of the goods will fall to moderate. But I know our team's also been talking about, with the idea that that funding system, if it stays in place, the value of that dollar will not always be the same. I know the council's had some conversation about whether or not they want that funding source to be in place long-term. So the shortest way I can describe it is our strategy right now is make as much difference as we can with the dollars we have available at this time, with the understanding that eventually it's not gonna be there, and when we have less dollars available, to get more into those preventive maintenance techniques. Because one, they tend to be less expensive, and two, at that point in time, we're gonna have no other option because it's all our budget will be able to maintain. So again, I think the goal is to try to get as many of those reds to not be red right now, but with the long-term vision is we're gonna have to start doing some of these maintenance, more of these preventative maintenance techniques once we've been able to do some catch-up. Charlie, is that a fair description of
We're
what?
playing catch up, and to Justin, we are doing preventative maintenance on the ones we've done 2 or 3 years ago. So we're kind of getting out front, getting what we can done on the reds, but also crack sealing and doing what we can.
Protecting the existing.
Protecting what we've done, yes.
Yes, okay.
So eventually, hopefully in 3 years, a lot of that red's gone, now we just keep maintaining.
It's
Great.
evident that you guys have a pretty good asset management plan. In our jurisdictions that we rate, where they just do the worst first, and you can't see, I mean, they have 9s or 2s. So,
And I definitely don't mean, like, the last thing I'm trying to do is disagree with the Metro Council. I mean, we're spoiled to have the relationship with what we have. I mean, they're arguably the best run MPO in the state in a lot of ways. But, you know, I can also tell you, I mean, one of the challenges you're just gonna run into is, you know, politically, when you're looking at 44th Street, that has potholes that are 8 inches deep, and it's one of our most transferred roads, there really are imperfect decisions that get made in deciding what roads you do. The best advice I can ever give you all, though, is don't pick roads on a year-by-year basis, because then it turns into just a political quandary. The fact that you have let your staff put together a multi-year CIP that is informed by the variety of Paiser ratings, needs, the conversations we hear in the community, and then create your plan and work your plan is the best advice I can ever provide. Because again, it's going to be as imperfect as anything else. There is no magic sauce, but allowing your staff to use the metrics that exist to put a plan in place and then work the plan is probably gonna be the best advice I can
best
provide.
option. It's not a science.
We try to make it a science.
We try to make it,
but it is an imperfect
Yeah,
science,
yeah.
for sure.
I think kudos to Charlie. I mean, the data that we're provided here really shows from 21 to 25 how much change there has been. And I think Charlie has had to play a lot of catch up in his role. And so what has been prioritized, there seems to be great progress on that. So thank you, Charlie, and thank you for answering my question. My only other question is just out of curiosity, and that is when you look at a road like Chicago Drive, you see that it has multiple colors. And so I'm wondering, when you have a road like that, how long of a stretch is used to determine, you know, if you're using the worst part of the worst lane, like how long does that extend for to determine that's the segment that we're looking at?
It breaks at each intersection.
So every intersection is where you reevaluate.
It is. And I don't know if I said this, Paiser ratings can be a little deceiving as well, based on the date of which we rated it. So you might put a treatment out on a road that's showing up there as red, and we rated it the week before. So we
It's
can,
a snapshot.
yeah, it's a snapshot in time. So we can update our map on our end and give you an updated map if you give us the information or the treatments that you've laid down. And it might increase your overall Paiser rating when we do that. But when we provide the reports, it's the assumption that, I mean, this is done July 28th or whatever. Yeah.
And I don't think council will be surprised, but I mean, if you look at what roads are on the plan for the next couple of years, it's a lot of them that you would assume by looking at this. Again, they don't always happen, to your point, Mike, like we don't pick just the worst road to do next. The other thing we're always trying to do is being strategic based on the various funding sources that are in place. So for example, the Grand Valley Metro Council makes federal dollars available via their TIP. We normally get about 4 projects for every 5 years on the tip. They're the ones who helped, I think did 80% of Kennewa this last year.
Yep.
You know, we're on the track to do a big chunk of Rivertown Parkway, but I don't think it's for a couple years. So the idea though is we're not gonna pay with all local dollars, when if we wait 2 more years, we can get 80% funded via federal dollars. So there is a little bit of filling in the gaps that happens based on when we can get federal dollars on these projects. And then, I mean, I think he brings up a really good point. You know, you can obviously see the map and go, oh, look, we did that stretch of 44th already. You
Right.
know that piece is going to be better.
Like east of
Yeah.
Ivan Rest?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. So there's a lot of interesting there's a lot of interesting pieces there. And I'd also just say, you know, Justin, I really, you know, appreciate, I mean, you mentioned DPW and Charlie. I can't say it for a fact, but I would also tell you, if you look at the amount of projects we as an organization have done over just the last 3 years compared to the 5-year period, again, what I would encourage you all to look at is that trend, and next year look at it, and the year after look at it, and I am pretty confident you are going to see not only a continuation, but hopefully a bigger push of more in the green than in the red, because that's gonna be directly tied to the amount of money you all are investing into your system.
Other questions? Garen?
Yeah, you know, when we were talking about our millage increase, I had brought up this, and this may be super confusing, but since you're here, I'm gonna ask you. We're rating good, fair, and poor out of a 10-point scale, but 40% is allocated towards the poor, right? So naturally, there should be more red on there regardless. If you shifted one of those ratings to fair to be maybe like 4 through 7, there'd probably be more yellows. And if you shifted, you know, 7 through 10, there'd probably be more greens.
Sure.
So I don't know that I agree with like the scaling process of this, and I think it paints a picture that we need to invest a lot more than we really need to. I'm happy that we're investing money in
Sure.
roads, believe me, that's not what I'm asking about. I'm just wondering, why is the system a 40-30-30 split?
It's a TAMC developed this Pacer rating, and the breaks for those, like from 10 to 8 was gonna be good, 4 to 7 is gonna be fair, and then 5 to 7 would be fair, 4 to 1 is gonna be poor. It's just what Michigan does, if that's your question.
I mean, I didn't expect a magic answer.
Yeah,
But if you
I mean-
rate out 1 through 12, then every category is exactly equal.
Yeah,
I bet our map would look differently than this. That's where I'm going with this.
yeah, the categories are kind of predetermined.
Sure. And I get it, that's not your job.
Yeah.
But I had to ask, because I brought it up.
And I think it's a fair
Yeah.
one.
Fair
I
question.
think what I appreciate about what they're describing as is, I just want everyone, and council, you all understand, because you speak this language before, but for people in the audience or people at home, this isn't just a random rating that we
Right.
choose to use. This is the same rating that everybody in the state is using, and actually, I think
And
the
some
fact-
surrounding states.
and some surrounding. And I also always find value in the fact that the Metro Council does the ratings for us. We also know that everyone within their metropolitan rating agency is being rated the same way, which does make comparing apples to apples much easier than if 5 different entities were doing the same rating system for 5 communities. There's inevitably gonna be a little bit of variability, even
Right.
though they're using the same
We have the
standard.
same raters out every year too.
Exactly.
Yeah. And usually an MDOT representative on the federal aid roads. So they're coming from all walks. And you guys, if you want to do, I think you have in the past, send I think it was Bill? Was it Bill? Bill goes with us to rate the federal aid roads, but he wasn't available this year.
Right.
But yeah, it's a conversation in the Tahoe when we're driving around. Everybody's Pacer trained, so it's just a conversation. So we want to get it right. If you don't have good data, you can't plan.
Best we can.
Any other questions?
Any questions?
Thanks for great information. I know it's very helpful to Charlie, who puts it in the whole plan, and like Griffin said, long-term strategic planning. And I think this is always good, objective information to have, and especially if somebody asks about the millage increase, what are you doing with that money? Well, putting it toward the roads, because there's the need, so.
There isn't.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Next presentation is about the Clean Water Plant Maintenance Building, and our friends from Ryan, from Warren Brewdrink are gonna tell us about that. Welcome.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me here. Today we're going to talk about the new maintenance center that's being planned down at the Clean Water Plant. So here to just kind of introduce what we've been doing and a little bit about why we're doing some of this stuff so that we can hopefully move the project forward. So just a little background. The guys, Todd and his staff, maintain millions of dollars worth of equipment down there. And it's nice that they can do it themselves to the best of their ability. There are things they do have to outsource, but for the most part, they do it themselves both at the plant and for the lift station. They've got trucks and equipment that do specific functions, and they need to store those and keep them maintained. They have maintenance activities that they do, welding, machining, electrical stuff like that, specialized process equipment, screens, grits, blowers, all of that stuff. They replace it and repair it, and similar to the Pazer ratings, if you do some repairs on it, you keep it from going really bad and having to spend a lot of money. So they do a nice job with that. One of the things that's happening right now is that their maintenance centers, their maintenance buildings that they currently use are older, repurposed buildings, and they've got multiple personnel and staff and functions within those. They also try to store parts in there and things like that. But there's some concerns with some of the safety, the ability to do clean work on pieces of equipment that need to be reassembled in a clean environment, and the efficiency and their ability to do the work quickly and efficiently. So this is their current facility. This is a Star building out there. It was built actually by the state of Michigan in 1978 to house a fish research laboratory. And eventually the state turned it back over to the city of Grandville. They repurposed it for warm equipment and vehicle storage. But being from 1978 vintage myself, I can tell you that eventually things wear out, and you need, as much as you try to keep yourself in top condition, it's difficult. So if you want to see the next slide there, shows some of the things that are happening to the building. It's getting past its useful life expectancy. It's almost 50 years old. You just can't keep everything in tip-top condition for that long. Typically, metal buildings like this are about a 20-year lifespan, maybe 25. So the guys at the plant have done a nice job of keeping things up to date and repaired to the best of their ability, but it's time to move on from this old building. The other piece of the puzzle that they have out there is they repurposed their old laboratory building back in the 2010 project, and that was built in 1963. And then they added more clean and warm space to do some of that specialized repair and maintenance in there, as well as some part storage. So you can kind of see the outside of the building is getting worn out a little bit. And then if you go to the next slide, this just kind of shows some of the conditions that they have in there. They're trying to store equipment and boots and things, and it's jammed in there. There's file storage. There's countertops that are at this point pretty beat up from the stuff they do in there. If you go into the next slide, you can see again it's not quite intended for the purpose that it has now. They've got heavy equipment on there. You see that pump in that picture. I mean, that is a cast iron pump. It's very heavy, so they don't really have the great moving equipment to get it in and out of there. So what we are proposing, overcapacity just with part storage and stuff. And then next one. So what we're proposing is to build a maintenance center out there. It's going to be a pre-engineered metal building with a stick-built construction for economy of space. So kind of combination between pre-engineered and custom built with just boards and things like that. There's going to have separate office areas from the maintenance activities. I couldn't really show them those other pictures, but currently there's two people whose offices are right in there where all the maintenance happens. So it's noisy and it's dirty and it's not a great area for that. Well lit and ventilated work areas for the welding and cutting they do, just for safety purposes, and washing things down to make sure they can do all the activities. And then we're going to separate some clean areas out for some of the electrical equipment and other sensitive work that they need to do there. Ideally, we've got some part storage and stack space that they can efficiently put things where they need to put it. And then they also store totes of polymer out there that need to be temperature controlled. And so rather than in a building that is difficult to maintain the temperature in, that old metal building, they can put it at a specific temperature and keep that polymer good, because that's not cheap stuff. Ideally, they've got vehicle entry for equipment so that they can lift things off with cranes from the trucks that they move stuff with, and then everything would be climate controlled for the storage. This is just a floor plan that we've been talking through with Create 3 Architecture. You can see on there some of the clean rooms, some of the areas to maintain trucks and equipment, some of the storage, some of the office space, including like a washing room where they can, after they are in tanks or maintaining equipment, they can wash off their boots or their waders or whatever they are into at that particular point in time without bringing that into their office space and everything. This is how it would lay out on the site. This blue square area here, rectangle area, is where the current maintenance building is now, that current metal-sided building. So that would get demolished, and then this would be put basically in its spot with a larger footprint. Just a general isometric view of this. This is kind of looking to the northwest from here. I did want to make clear this is actually a single-story building. It's just got a high bay on it to be able to put the stacked stuff up, use overhead cranes, things like that. And then the next view is kind of looking back from the south towards Baldwin Street. So the next steps in our process are basically we're going to select a contractor, and we're going to use that same methodology of qualifications-based selection that we used for the last couple projects down at the plant. They've gone very well, stayed on time, stayed on budget, been really, really well done. So we'll work with that selected contractor to get a guaranteed maximum budget for this one. And then we will come back to you guys with that team in place and a guaranteed maximum contract to present to the council for approval at that point in time. So what we would do once we've got that is to leverage that contractor to help us provide input into that final design to make sure it's efficient and cost effective, and make sure we've got all the elements in there that we need for the design to make sure Todd and his guys have what they need. And then we order some of the long lead materials, steel and some of that kind of stuff. Any of the equipment might need to be ordered a ways out in order to get it in time and then get it constructed. So that is the general plan. Did I cover everything, Todd?
No, that was great.
Brian, if I can add one more thing just for context for the council. So just so you all know kind of what we're thinking about in terms of timeline was to bring this introduction to you all this evening, give you the opportunity to ask any questions, provide any feedback, express any concerns at this point in the process before they start going through the contractor selection, final budgeting numbers, all that extra level of work that'll be done before we ultimately bring the project for you all for consideration. But this project was estimated to be funded over 2 budget years, so we would be looking at a tentative construction of, think about next spring into the summer, into the fall, so that the cost of those projects can be spread out over 2 budget years. Again, obviously, some of that will get finalized in terms of timeline with the contractor that's ultimately constructed, selected, excuse me. But just so you all know tentatively what the timeline of the project that we had been contemplating, we're looking at pretty much a next construction year, so construction year 2026 project.
And what's your estimated time to bring in the proposed contractor and budget?
Well, we've already kind of started basically taking the documents that we had used to select them previously and working with the architect to modify those. So we're hoping to get it in front of them here in the next couple weeks, and then it'll take us a couple weeks to let them respond to us and get all their documentation back. So I'm hoping before the end of the year we can have a contractor selected and on board to start working with us to get a GMP. Once we move that forward, then we can bring that to you guys and hopefully get everything moving to get constructed.
Any other questions for Brian? Great.
Okay, thank you.
Good presentation, appreciate it. It's time for public comment. Anybody here like to address the council? Just come on up to the podium, give us your name, address, tell us what you're thinking about tonight. Anybody? Welcome.
Jason Flanagan, 4323 Paiute Drive Southwest. I wanted to start by talking a little bit about the Buck Creek Eagle Quest. We had a great event a couple weeks ago. I want to say thanks to the mayor for coming and being willing to dress up as a butterfly. As a monarch butterfly, and to read off the proclamation that you had approved. So it's a great event. Attendance was up 70% from last year. Large part of that was, in partnership with Friends of Buck Creek and WEMIAC. They worked to secure a grant from DTE to help fund the event. So it was bigger and better than ever, and hopefully next year it turns out the same. But then I was also excited to see, we're talking about Pazer scores. I work for a major retailer, and my team's responsible for managing pavement replacement in a larger way than even the city, just based on the square footage we have. But we use Pazer, so it's not just public entities using the standard for rating. And the same problems exist. There's never enough funding to keep pace. And just to add some context to the, why is 4 poor and not fair, and it has more to do with when you get to that level, the cost to remediate is the same as 3, 2, or 1. So as you transition from those groups, the costs become higher.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, and thanks for all your work with that event a couple Saturdays ago too. There were a lot of people there.
It was great. Great family event.
Thank you. Mike, welcome.
Hey, thanks. Mike Cobb, 336 240th. Just in the roads thing, when I was in high school, I thought I learned that government was for police and fire, roads, and parks was the major. We're the 3rd highest in gas tax. And yet they keep taking that money away from the road projects. And, the House has a bill set up to throw a bunch, 30-some% more, and yet the governor and them can't seem to come together on it. But we got to figure something out. I mean, there's the money is just not there. We got all these bridges falling apart, and somebody's got to, quit spending so much on other stuff and put it back to what needs to. And thank you all for your service. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the comments, appreciate it, Mike. Anybody else like to address the council? Okay, if not, we'll go down to consent agenda, and approval would be in the best interest of the city because we do have some purchases on there. We have some reports from August, the investment treasurers and EMS fire report. We also have the minutes from the Park and Recreation Board June meeting and the Environment and Sustainability Committee August meeting, as well as the Downtown Development Authority September 11 meeting. Also on here would be the authorization through the Michigan Municipal League Liability and Property Pool Director's Ballot, and our own council member Josh Merrigan is up for that. Josh, you've not served on this before. I mean, I know you're very
I've served on
involved.
it for about a year, and I was appointed to fill a vacancy.
Okay.
And then this would be like a full term, so.
Okay, good,
I
thanks
need
for
to
being.
recuse myself on the consent agenda.
Maybe just, we'll pull that, we'll do that item separately, so you can, yeah. Okay,
Yes,
so
I'm interested.
that's one of the items. And then we have a memo in there from Griffin about the City Hall, I think it's from Griffin, about the City Hall renovations, refresh. Motor pool 2026 utility card and a motor pool lawnmower, and there's memos on that also. So like I said, approval would be in the best interest of the city. So let's remove the authorization on the Michigan Municipal League liability and property pool, and we'll just vote, we'll take that up in a second. But we'll take the other items under the consent agenda, and is there a motion to approve the consent agenda in the best interest of the city?
Support.
Okay,
Motion.
all right. good.
I'm sorry.
Motion
What am I doing?
Motion and support. Any questions, anything anybody would like to discuss on there in particular separately? If not, Marcy, would you call the roll on that, please?
Councilmember Norhuck,
Yes.
Vanderwall,
Yes.
Gelderlos,
Yes.
Merringa,
Yes.
and Mayor Mas.
Yes. Okay, so the final item on there is the authorization, let me see if I can find it, for the Michigan Municipal League Liability and Property Pool. This is the Board of Directors election. 2 spots are open. And the candidates are, like I said, Josh Mariga, who will be excusing himself from this vote. The other person is Michelle Lavoy, don't know her, but she's clerk treasurer in the city of Monroe. And is there a motion? Anything that you want to add about that, Josh?
No,
No,
not
you're
really.
not
I mean,
voting
it's-
on that.
Like I said, I've been on there for about a year now. It's been interesting learning kind of the ins and outs behind the scenes, a little bit about the insurance
Yeah.
liability side of things, and lots of good things happening there. So they do a good job, I think, of, kind of managing the funds and, being equitable and, judicious about, paying out claims and taking care of the communities that are being represented, so.
Thanks for being willing to serve on there. I know you've been very involved in other league things, so you've got a good understanding of what's going on. So now if you can just get our premiums down a little bit, so see what you can do. With lots more coverage too, so no complaints. All right.
They're trying really hard to do that,
Yeah.
keep it affordable and make sure that you're getting good value for what's being spent, so.
So is there a motion to approve the election of these 2 individuals for the board of directors of the liability and property?
I'm gonna redeem myself and I'll motion.
Thank you. Support. And support by Chair. All right. Marcy, would you call the roll on this one, please?
Councilmember Vanderwall,
Yes.
Gelderlos,
Yes.
Norhuck,
Yes.
and Mayor Mas.
Yes. Griffin, city managers report.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. We'll try to keep it relatively short. I know we have a lighter meeting this evening, but a couple presentations that were informative. But just wanted to talk for a few minutes about the priority tracking spreadsheet at the end of your packet. A version of this was brought to the council on May 12th, and at that time, part of our discussion was around bringing this to the council on a quarterly basis to do a level of monitoring or discussion. So I don't necessarily want to go line by line through it, but I wanted to give you all a written update on some of the items that we had talked about. Obviously, based on the rankings, we have been trying to put most of our focus on those higher up on the list. Obviously, there are items lower on the list and not on the list at all that still have to get accomplished in terms of our day-to-day efforts. But if you don't mind, I would just take a minute to really highlight some of the top 10 items, and hopefully you can see they're kind of opposite than our Pazer map. There is much more green and then some yellow and then a few reds that we can talk about more if it's not clear on why there's not kind of notable progress being made on some of those. But just in terms of some of the top 10 items and progress being made associated with those, the first one that was the highest ranked item back in our strategic plan of January was to continue community events. Council has continued to invest in community events. We're very fortunate to have a number of staff members, but particularly we'll highlight Teresa Mendering, who spends a lot of her time to make sure that we have some really special community events. But I think the notes and next steps are one that I spent some time on that would just encourage you to take a look at. I'm just kind of highlighting that we did debrief the 4th of July celebration this year. And that our team's also working on implementing the new special event permit fee and form. That was something we talked about with the budget this year and kind of altering how we do that. Nothing really to note in terms of the redevelopment of Rivertown Crossings, except that it was a major step over the last 6 months to resolve that tax appeal. And then I know that Matt, as the assistant city manager, had a meeting with their new development lead out there, and they are still trying to move plans ahead in regard to demoing the parking structure. That obviously did not take place this year as planned. It was delayed due to a few other anticipated investments they needed to make, including into the Celebration Cinema that I think you all have likely seen. I haven't personally been in it yet, but I've heard it's much better. And then over the last couple weeks, I'm sure you all have seen some of the significant landscaping they did, particularly along the corner of Wilson and Rivertown Parkway. They cleaned out a lot of overgrown landscaping there. So I know it's probably not as transformational of an improvements as we would be excited for, but there are little things happening there that I think are taking it in the right direction. What I wanted to talk with you all a little bit was number 3, enhancing and refreshing the gateways to the city. Obviously, the DDA funded the installation of a really nice looking gateway sign at the intersection of 28th Street and Wilson. We are working with the same company that designed those to put together some initial designs for the other locations where we've had gateway signage in the community, along Chicago Drive, which I'm not sure if you all have seen, but I think DPW just got that old kind of dilapidated wood sign down in the last couple weeks. So that, again, is sad on one hand, but also it was time. And we're gonna put together some initial designs and get some cost estimates that we'll bring back to you all at a future meeting. We have a little bit of money in the budget for this year and for next year that we'll have to see how far that money will go, but we'll have some future discussions there. Implementing the compensation and benefits study and taking retention efforts. You all have been very supportive of these, including the implementation of the comp plan in the most recent budget, the implementation of the exercise room over at the fire station, and then we've been doing some refreshing and reviewing of the work with our benefits broker, all of which are directly tied to not only implementing that comp study, but also making sure that we are doing the best we can to attract and retain top talent in our organization. I'm not going to go into implementing the roads and bridge plan. We've probably talked about that a lot, but it continues to be a major priority for our organization. Recruiting mixed-use development into our downtown core. The council took a major action associated with that at the September 8th meeting in regard to supporting a brownfield plan for the Timber Flats project. And then we also know there's been a level of discussion associated with a really exciting project at 4152 Chicago Drive that we're hopeful to move forward. Reviewing committee structure, roles, and responsibilities. We have been, Marcy in particular, so thank you, has been compiling a lot of info that we will be bringing to the council later in October when we bring the initial board expiration list for this year, but has been compiling a lot of background in regard to what boards do we currently have, how are they created, are they required by law, or are they optional, and hopefully at that time we can have some additional discussion about whether or not there are some boards that are outdated, maybe can be condensed, maybe need refreshed, but I think starting to have some of that conversation would be helpful. Just obviously, we rely on volunteers to serve on all those boards and making sure that they have defined beneficial tasks in their volunteering to the community. Refreshing plans to connect 28th Street. This has been delayed slightly. The DDA did pay to conduct a warrant analysis along 28th Street to see what could be done in regard to implementing a improved traffic crossing, and we are now just waiting to have some follow-up discussions now that we've conducted that analysis with MDOT, and that's just been a little slower than anticipated, trying to get on their schedule. Develop a plan to protect and preserve Buck Creek. This is another one that there are some items going, but I'll admit probably not as quickly as some of the others, but the two that I will highlight is we've been piloting some no-mow zones, try to say that 5 times fast, along some areas of Buck Creek to see what we think about that. Does that create a major impediment in terms of people's enjoyment of some of the parks, in terms of the trade-off with some of the ecological benefits? So we've been piloting a few of those, and then we are also having some conversations with Trout Unlimited, which is a local organization that has some ideas that they would like to see implemented along Buck Creek, particularly along the cemetery. I think they presented to the Parks Commission over a year ago, and then the Parks Commission has had a variety of different discussions with them over time. So that's kind of sitting out there as a project we are probably more in the exploration phase of. And then the last one I want to hit on this evening, unless you all have any other conversations, is some of the options to explore enhancing our communication and marketing efforts. Council obviously approved a proposal with Sable PR that we will actually be kicking off have our kickoff meeting tomorrow. That did get rescheduled once, so I'm sorry if there's confusion there. But to put together both a draft communications plan as well as do some crisis communication planning with Sabo PR. It's my hope that that plan can then be used to help inform some future decision-making about where we may want to go in regard to enhancing some of our communications. One item on that, or that is kind of indirectly related to that, that I want to make sure you all are aware of, specifically related to WCET and some transition there. Had put some notes in some of our materials over the last couple months, and Councilman Steenstra sits on that board as well, and we've been involved in some of these conversations. The manager of the WCET station that's funded by contributions from both us and the city of Hudsonville resigned effective July 1, which really instituted a pretty significant conversation about whether or not it was still feasible to fund a full-time position to WCET, particularly given the return on what they are providing on a regular basis. And have just kind of had some really tough discussions around the outdatedness, if you will, of the PEG channel model, given today's streaming and internet access and how many people are actually watching these stations. The fact that I don't know how many of us on the council, or how many of you on the council were aware that for apparently 6 months the station was completely off air while they were doing some things. And it's just one of these models that candidly, the intent was really good, the collaboration we have with some of our partners are really good, but given the fact that the city contributes over $70,000 annually, are we really getting good value for those dollars in terms of what we're receiving? So I know I've got some meetings with Grandville Public Schools, and we're exploring some alternative methods to maybe collaborate on some of the communication channels, but to not beat this to death, I just want you all to be aware that there are some really difficult conversations being had right now around WCET and whether or not that in its current form is something that's in the community's best interest to continue. This is not a like we want to walk away and be a bad partner, but both Hudsonville schools, Grandville schools, the city of Hudsonville and the city of Grandville are all kind of having the same conversation about, is it the time to potentially consider some kind of different community communication methods, and that just happens to kind of be at the same timing. I know we're exploring potential alternatives in our communication, so I don't have the answer for that one right now, but more just want to make sure that's all on all of your radar, that I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but I don't anticipate it's going to be in the exact same form that it's been for a while. So if you want to talk more about that offline, I'm happy to, or I don't want to speak for Councilman Steenstra, but he's been actively involved in these conversations as well, and I know we would be happy to kind of talk more if you're interested. But for the sake of not going further and kind of dominating the time, I wanted to make sure you all got this quarterly. I plan on updating it, bringing it to you quarterly. Are there any specific objectives or items or questions you all have about anything on this spreadsheet that I can provide some clarity on this evening? Yes?
I appreciate you bringing this back. It's been a while since we've looked at this, and it's impressive actually how much we've been able to accomplish already in the last year. And lots of green on here, a few yellow, and then a few red, but really, you know, a lot has been able to be accomplished. And I mean, it just kind of shows, you know, we went through this exercise, we spent quite a bit of time going through and identifying these items and prioritizing things, and it's really been, you know, pretty effectively executed this year as far as prioritizing, you know, budget items and initiatives and projects and things. So, so good job to everybody involved to help kind of make this happen. I mean, we can't set the vision, but a lot of it's been staff that's been bringing these things, you know, forward and moving on them. I had a question though. One of the things that's on here towards the bottom of the list is develop and implement a community input survey. It's in red yet. We haven't really talked about it. It says nothing planned for fiscal year 25-26. I know we haven't discussed it, but I wonder if that's something that Sabo PR might be able to help us with. as a communication item or a community input item.
If that
Somewhere
was,
down the road, maybe not this year, but next year, something to be thinking about. I know it was done in the past, it's been quite a long time, but, you know, maybe as we go and look at our, process for next year to see, you know, it'd be nice to get some community input on some of these items, and maybe they can help us with that.
I think they potentially could, I know to do a community input survey, there's kind of two ways you can do it. I mean, we can put together kind of an informal, like almost Survey Monkey type thing, but my suggestion would be if we're gonna go through the full process of a community input survey, we're gonna wanna do it in a statistically significant way, and there's obviously costs associated with that. So admittingly, that one, nothing planned for this year, really just came down to, that was lower on the list. If you actually look at the votes, it was one that didn't receive a lot this year. And because of that, it obviously didn't get any funding in this year's budget, but I don't disagree with you. I think part of the benefit of maintaining a tracking spreadsheet like this, not only is it an accountability mechanism for everybody, but it also can help us recognize that there are a lot of really good things we could be doing for the community. Not everyone is going to be able to get done at the same time, and particularly not all of these are necessarily going to get accomplished in 1 year. And kind of is a good leeway, if I can, to kind of the next item I have on the manager's report, which is starting to talk about selecting a date for strategic planning in 2026. It's kind of my hope as city manager to at least suggest to all of you that there are tangible benefits in going through the investment of several hours of your time annually to help update this spreadsheet. I think beneficially, we won't be starting from scratch this year. You weren't necessarily starting from scratch being on council, but you were with me as a new city manager. And I think that item would be a great one to talk about whether or not we want to move that up on the list for funding moving forward. I know I've been kind of keeping a standing list of some items such as the use of that property on Wallace, the Habitat for Humanity item we talked about earlier in the year. Cemetery expansion's been coming up a little more recently, short-term rentals, chicken ordinance, code enforcement. So just some various items that all of which are not on this right now, but are items that council may want to consider adding and prioritizing as we move forward. So I guess before I get too much into selecting a date, hopefully that answers your question a little bit, at least about the mindset we've had about the community survey for this year. But I definitely think it's worth considering more in the future.
Right, well, and maybe they can even help us kind of figure out what would we want to survey about, or what kind of questions would we want to ask, because it's not that we haven't got community input. We just went through the master planning process in the last couple of years. We just did Park and Rec master plan. You know, we gathered community input in various ways for specific projects or specific initiatives, but maybe they can help us kind of figure out what else we want to get, you know, input about.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions about the spreadsheet right now? If not, just for the sake of everyone's time, kind of point you towards a few dates that highlighted in the memo I prepared for you all. But very similar to last year, if you all are interested and willing, I would very much like to facilitate a strategic planning session with the city council to kick off the budget process. Again, kind of hard to think about that we're in September and already going to talk about next year's budget process, but very similar to last year, the session that we hosted on January 6th. Kent County Administrator Al Vanderberg, who helped at that time, is willing to come back and help us again. I think we saw some of the benefits of having somebody support us through that process, and again, we're fortunate to have that relationship, and he does that for us at no cost and more as a service in his role as county administrator to help the local governments in that jurisdiction. But with that being said, like we all are, he's a pretty busy guy and really only had 3 different Mondays in that December, January timeframe that we would be able to host that. My hope is that we would do something kind of similar to last year, so a couple-hour session, we'll provide dinner and kind of make it a standalone meeting. But with that, I also understand we would need to take a look because these dates, particularly the two that are proposed in January, are dates of our regularly scheduled meetings. We're far enough back that we could look at rescheduling a regular scheduled meeting for another date, or the other option, which I'm not as much of a fan of, but at the end of the day, it's up to you all, is we could theoretically split the strategic planning session into two shorter sessions prior to a regularly scheduled meeting and still host our meetings on the 12th or the 26th. But with all that being said, well, or the other option is we pick a different date and just realize we don't do it with Al this year. But I at least wanted to bring to you all several months ahead to try to get us starting to think about when you all may be available and if you all were willing to go through this process again.
The 8th is also council meeting too.
Yes.
That's the second Monday, even though it's the 8th. It seems weird that it's that close, but yeah.
Yes.
So they all are.
They all are. So again, we've got enough time, we could work around that. Again, whether it's we do one meeting that month, whether or not it's we split them or rearrange them, but I at least wanted to throw these 3 dates out to you and see if any of them worked, were better, were worse, or again, JR to others' points, I mean, if we would rather pick different dates, that's okay too, but I at least did reach out to Mr. Vanderberg to figure out his availability, and he was excited to try to work with us again and recognizes kind of the value of some consistency in how we do this, but we obviously have the challenge of finding a date where we can get as many people together as possible.
Did we ask Al just about Monday night availability, or there?
I did right now. If we wanted to look at some others, I'm happy to do that. I did that just because when we did this last year, everyone kind of said for several hours Monday tended to be the best because they kind of normally have council stuff penciled in for those days. But if we wanted to look at other dates, we could do that too. I'm happy to follow up with him.
I guess I'll go first. My gut is to say to do it on a Monday with the council meeting, just because it's kind of already penciled in. I prefer wait to January. December just seems to fill up pretty quickly with
The
holiday
holidays and
things
everything,
and
absolutely.
family things and whatever. So either of the two would be satisfactory to me, if we were to keep it.
Yeah, works for me too. I mean, any of them others, but probably January. Because we're gonna have a couple new council members and that gives them a chance to have a couple meetings.
That was part of our thought as well, as, understanding we won't know who's gonna be on council until that time, and, we also can we need to keep moving and start to work on planning, but at least putting it in January would give that new person enough time. It wouldn't be their first meeting, for example.
Josh?
Yeah, that's a good point, because December 8th would actually be the first meeting, because we can't seat new members until after December 1st, and that would be our first regular meeting after December 1st.
So, great example of why that's probably
That's
not a good
usually,
date.
that's usually like a 2-meeting night, that first meeting, right?
Right.
Because we do a short meeting, and then swear in, and then do a longer meeting, swear in, then do a shorter meeting, whatever. But I think it might be nice to do it in January too, then, just for that.
Randy?
Are we potentially gonna get hung up by a new law that says, our charter is different, wasn't there a piece of legislation that says we cannot seat new members until the election has been officially certified?
Right.
After December 1st.
That's after December 1st, that's the date that
That is one that's a great one that you bring up. Marcy and I have been talking about that to make sure that when we get to that point following the election, that we're following state law.
I thought it was January, but.
I don't
December
believe
1,
so.
first of December.
But we're working on confirming that right now. If I believe Marcy's got some questions into the state to just confirm how it works with us. But because our charter and the state law would be in conflict, my understanding is the state law would trump. So I guess hearing a little bit that the 8th is not great, Justin, I do recognize, obviously you won't be on council at that time. Paul won't either. I'll follow up with Tim. With those that are here, is there a strong preference or against either the 12th or the 26th, or if we get one of those scheduled and I confirm with the group, we'll just plan on that, and then obviously, when we get to the point of setting the 2026 meeting schedule, we'll just know that we'll have this in line, and we'll work around that as necessary. Okay, thank you.
Heads nodding, yes.
Okay. Thank you, and I appreciate your guys' willingness to do this. I do know it's an investment of time, but it is very helpful for me in my role and then our team to kind of go through that process with you annually in preparation for the budget. So the only other item I have to share this evening is just I want to say thank you to the council for allowing us to close City Hall on Friday this last week, the 19th. We conducted some really successful in-service trainings for the City Hall team. Some members of the police department facilitated a de-escalation training and an active shooter training for our team. I know those are not the most positive or exciting of topics, but they are very important in the time and world we live in. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for letting us do that. Obviously, we will try not to make a habit of closing City Hall extra, but that I think was a very worthwhile reason to do so. So I appreciate it. And other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Questions for Griffin? Anything else, Griffin?
Not for me, thank you.
Your council member comments, Jared, let's start with you. Ken.
Picking on me because I'm the only one down here.
Yeah?
Yeah. Nothing for me tonight.
Okay, all right. Justin.
Yeah, just real quick, I just want to reiterate how great it was to see the results on the spreadsheet here. And, you know, you mentioned as you're planning for the next one, how important that time can be, and we're seeing that really can be, because that drove the work that you did as a staff, as well as the priorities of the council. And so I'm just thankful for this update. It was really nice to see a lot to be proud of. So, thank you.
Josh.
Yeah, so just wanted to mention a couple things about the conference from MML this last week. So I concluded my 4 years on the Board of Trustees at my meeting on Tuesday. And so I was privileged to be able to serve in the statewide committee to help with the league. It's a great opportunity and I appreciate it. Great to go to the convention as always. It was in Grand Rapids this year, which is not quite as much fun to not be able to travel somewhere, but it was good. They had some really good keynote speakers. One of them was known as the local government whisperer, and the other one was known as the happy urbanist. That was kind of the bookmark ends to the conference. I thought they were both really good speakers, talking about different placemaking issues and just kind of how to make things happen in your community. We also had a general session presented by some of the folks in Grand Rapids about placemaking through art. As you know, Grand Rapids has a lot of murals on buildings, and of course Art Prize is going on right now, so that was kind of timely to hear about that. Other sessions I went to had to do with civility in local government and local economic development, and another one was about something that I'm not recalling off the top of my head. But anyway, it was a very good conference. Congratulations to Negaunee, which is a small community up in the Upper Peninsula that I had really not heard of before, but they won the Community Excellence Award this year for their downtown placemaking project, so congrats to them. So it'll be 2 years in a row now that the cup is up in the UP, and so that's kind of interesting. And the president, who's just finishing his term now, is also from the UP, Sault Ste. Marie, so a lot of Uper love going on right now with the Michigan Municipal League, so, but anyway, thanks for the opportunity to participate in that.
Great.
I also had the opportunity, and I'm thankful to Grandville for allowing me to go to the MML conference in Grand Rapids, and I took a couple educational classes, both of them having to do with placemaking. One was, we took a tour of the Boston Square area in Grand Rapids and the redevelopment work that's going on there through nonprofits and the city and how they're working together, and also another one regarding housing issues and Main Street type issues, and I thought they were both somewhat applicable to what we have going on around town, and we're looking at potential redevelopment of the mall in our Chicago Drive district, so I'm thankful for that. And this was a good conference and beneficial, so it was nice to go there. And then I guess my only other comment is just regarding the PACER report. I appreciate the Metro Council, extremely thankful for their hard work and that they were able to pay, 80% of the road work on Kenowa, which would have been a really heavy lift for us if we had to do that by ourselves. And I understand, I don't always like it, but I understand their standardized rating of cities and that they want to use the same system with us as, say, Grand Rapids or Wyoming or probably multiple communities. I value their hard work. I don't know if this PACER report is reflective of Grandville. I think our roads are in better condition than what this report suggests. I understand that their goal is to compete with other jurisdictions with the feds to get money for us to do roads, and I understand that, and I appreciate that. Then again, I don't think it's like totally reflective of the conditions of our roads. And I know you guys know that I've always been a big advocate of good roads in Grandville. Just an example is based on their scale. They have Wilson in the condition that we should be resurfacing it already. And I don't know when we did that, right, 10 years ago? I don't know if anybody recalls, but I drove it today a couple times. I don't think it's to the point where it needs to be resurfaced. So, just my humble opinion, I do think we have a lot of road work we can do around Grandville, but my point is I'm just not sure this is totally accurate and reflective of our road conditions. So I would just encourage all you guys, next budget season in the spring, when we get together, to get up and get off your chairs and get out and look at our local road conditions before we put our capital plan together. And while I think this is a very good plan for the Metro Council to keep us competitive as a major region and a good way to raise money, I'm not sure it's the best plan for us to make our decisions as we go forward with our capital road repairs. And there are roads that we need to do. I just don't agree with necessarily the order or the ranking in this report. So that's it.
Appreciate the comments. I appreciate also being able to go to the Michigan Municipal League Conference last week. One of the stories we heard in the general sessions was how the Mackinac Bridge happened to occur and get approved in 1953, and it was completed later in that decade. And the speaker said one thing about leaders of local government is they, don't just do things right, but they do the right thing. And I appreciate this council for always, I believe, always trying to do the right thing. So, also, final comment, in looking at this chart of goals set at the beginning of the year, reminded me of something ultra runners use, a phrase. And as you may know, I run a lot. I am not fast, but I do keep moving forward. And it's called relentless forward motion. No matter how slowly you're moving or how fast you're moving, you are moving. And before you know it, you look back and like, oh, wow, I've just covered 62 miles, or I've covered 100 miles. And this kind of reminds me, every step just in isolation isn't maybe a huge step, but all together, there's some relentless forward motion here that I think is really, really good, and that we should be very happy about. So, yeah, many steps lead to great progress, I think. So, with that, is there a moment? Brandy.
I'm not sure I like Brian's comment about anything pre-1978. So, the end of its life expectancy. I just thought that.
I remember the year quite well. I do too. Do we have some motion to adjourn?
So moved. Support.
Support. All those in favor, please say yes. Yes.
Yes.
And opposition, please say no. Great. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.